484. 484. Ki Sisa, 484. Vaydabra Hashem el Moshe lemor. Ki Sisa es rosh b'nei Yisrael ifkudehem, v'nasu ish kofer nafsho la'Hashem b'ifkodosam, lo yeh b'hem negev b'ifkodosam. When you count the Bnei Yisrael, they each have to give an atonement. That's a strange terminology that when we count people, they need to give money as an atonement, what they do wrong. They didn't do anything wrong. What do we need to be? Just because we're counting you doesn't mean that we need to, what do you call it? They need an atonement for it. So what do you need an atonement for? So the answer is that anytime you have to count people, it's because there's been a population change. And part of population change is death. Right? Death creates change in population. Creates other problems, Jonathan, but it creates change in population when people die. So then the numbers change. Okay, people born also changes numbers, but people dying is also helps to change numbers, and therefore death came about only because of the golden calf. If not for the golden calf, there'd be no death. The Jewish people at the time of the golden calf got to the level of Adam Harishon Kodem Achet. They got to the state of Adam before the sin, which means, gentlemen, take chumashim. There should be more chumashim somewhere. They got to everybody should have a chumash. They got to the state, thank you, Rachamim. They got to the state of Adam Rishon Kodem Achet. They got to the state of Adam before the sin, page 484. In Adam before the sin, mankind had achieved the level where there would be no death in the world. What brought back death to the world? Sin. The woman who caused Adam to sin. So because death was brought back as in the population changes because of death, which can be because of a sin. So when you're counting people, it needs an atonement. Therefore, it's called the kofer nefesh. You go because the whole concept of counting people is a result of death. You're right. If people would be born, you also need to count them. But death is a part of the population change. There's even a halachic question. All the questions for a fair half hour. There's a halachic question about doing a census. Are Jews allowed to participate in a census where they what do you call it? Where they're counting the population. I actually worked in the United States in the 1980 census. I was a census taker. So you had to fill out a form. I went to a few houses and you fill out forms. I remember my boss, I got paid at the time, I think $3 per form. Every form that I filled, I got $3 per form. And the boss, his name was Todd Banner, and not Jewish. He got paid $5 a form. And I remember coming into him and telling him that I had trouble with one of the forms. I wasn't sure, so he says, give me the form, will you? And he just starts filling it out with whatever it was. And then I happened to see there's the amount of money that was being stolen and wasted. This is a government job. There's money floating around where they got all these census takers all of a sudden. There's just money floating around left, right, and getting stolen all over the place. If you ever wonder what government was, that was my government job. So then I was going to I wanted to become governor after that, but it never worked out. But so there's a question about, because we don't count people. When you count in shul, you need to do a minyan. So you use a pasuk that has 10 words. So the pasuk we use is Hoshea es amechu varech es nachosecha, and that pasuk happens to be Ureven Hoshea esacha uvarech es nachosecha, bless your people. That's what it says in that pasuk. It says bless your people, because counting the Jewish people 1, 2, 3, 4 could lead to a plague. So we use it. You could count 10, 9, 8, but you don't know that you're starting with 10, right? So 10, 9, 8. Maybe start with 14. How do you know how many to start with? So even that, probably not. You can't, because then you're assigning numbers to people. So we count words. So she has then we just count the words. That's the tradition. You also you could say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz, but then you have to be careful. Number one, to wash before you do that, and number two, make sure you don't take a bite out of anybody. Right? People could get very frum when it comes to sometimes people get confused. I told you a story about the guy. There's a Jewish guy. His anti-Semite stops him on the street, and he pulls a gun on him. He says, "Okay, Jew, I'm going to kill you. Do you have anything you'd like to say before you die?" So he goes, "Yes, I do." There's a bacha you make on a Kiddush Hashem. So the guy yells out. The guy looks at him and says, "You're a nut. I'm not going to waste a bullet on you. You're crazy. The guy, no, doesn't want to make a hefsek, be a bracha levatala, So you can make it, if you count people and you say amotzi lechem mina oretz, just make sure that nobody in the shul resembles a loaf of bread. Hey, hi, you look like a bagel. Come here. Be careful. So that's the idea, because that's the idea of that. There's the potential of a plague. Number one. Number two. If you take a look, there's a very interesting word here. The word vinasenu. It says that you count them. The second line, it says vinasnu ish kofer nafsho laHashem. That they're going to give a kofer nefesh. The word vinasenu. Now the word vinasenu is what we call in English a palindrome. Is that the word? A palindrome. What's that? Palindrome, which is a word that reads backwards and forwards the same way. Vinasenu reads backwards and forwards. And the idea is that when you give money away, money comes back to you, which we've spoken about in the past about tzedakah. That when you give it, vinasenu, you can send it in one direction, and vinasenu, and it comes back to you. You give the money, and the money comes back. We've spoken about that in the past, about how tzedakah, the merit of tzedakah, that the more you give, the more you end up getting. And what do you call it? So here, Jewish people are meant to be giving coins. Now, if you take a look, what do they give? Ze yitnu kol ha'over ala pikudim. This is what they're going to give. Machatzis ha'shekel b'shekel hakodesh, a half-shekel coin. Esrim geira ha'shekel, machatzis ha'shekel truma Hashem. Now, this right off the bat, could I ask you a question? Open that door over there. Do me a favor, open the door. In the window also. We could. It's getting summery. We could start opening, getting some air. Thank you very much. So, the first thing that should strike you is a bit bizarre. If I told you everybody's going to give a coin, we're going to count everybody by a coin. What your first inclination? What kind of coin would you give? A cheap coin, all right. That's because we're Jewish, right? Nobody, right? That's true. I would give a shekel coin. I wouldn't give a half a shekel. Why? The Torah says give a half a shekel. Why are you giving a half? Why are you a half? Why the first thing? Everybody give a shekel coin. You can afford it. Everybody can afford a shekel. Why a half shekel coin? This is what we did before Purim. We gave those coins. They're called the zecher l'machatzis shekel. Why do you give a half shekel coin? So that's question number one. What's that? You have an answer. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Because half a shekel, it means a process. When you give half, you think that in future you also give another half, and then.
Oh, that's good. In other words, a reminder.
You always donate yourself. Kind of.
Okay, good. Not bad. Never saw. That's an interesting idea. That by the way, you've only started giving. I got good news for you and bad news for you. The good news is you only have to give a half a shekel. Right? The bad news is it's only the beginning. that could be not a bad idea. You give a broken coin. A half is a broken coin because it's an atonement for the luchos. The luchos were broken, and therefore that's one of the ideas. Gentlemen who are mechutz lamachane over there, you're outside the camp. None of you are leprosy, so come on in and join us over here. Feel free to join. Come in, join us. Take a chumash, have a bowl of grapes. Come on in, make yourselves comfortable. Okay. Now Rashi says over here on Pasuk Yud Gimel. Take a look at Rashi. Take a look at 4 lines from the top on the right column. Ze yitnu, says Rashi, Hera lo kimin matbeya shel esh. Because Baruch Hu showed Moshe Rabbeinu a coin of fire. Umishkal ha'machatzis ha'shekel v'amar lo kazeh yitnu. So what is the idea of a coin? A coin that's made out of fire. A coin that's made out of fire. So the in number one and number two, you notice everybody's going to give the same amount. The Torah puts a limit. Everybody's going to give. The rich people, the poor people, everybody's going to give the same amount. The idea of a coin of fire, according to some of the commentaries, is that you should give it into fire. Is always a sign of enthusiasm. Right? Fire, you're burning with enthusiasm. Give the money enthusiastically. Right? It's difficult. Giving away money is difficult. We've spoken about that. Giving tzedakah is not easy to part with the money. There's a famous story. Reb Chaim Brisker was the head of the Brisker Yeshiva. So Reb Chaim Brisker, when fundraising for the Volozhin Yeshiva, So he stopped in a certain town. He said, the Volozhin Yeshiva is 10,000 rubles in debt. We need the money. And he was going to go around the town collecting. He was by a very wealthy man. The wealthy man said to him, was a frum guy, he said to him, listen, you sit and learn. You just sit and learn. You're Reb Chaim Brisker. You're the Gadol Hador. You sit and learn. I'll come up. I'll collect the money. You just stay in my house and learn, and I'll collect the money for you. Okay? So after a week, he comes to Reb Chaim and he gives him 5,000. He needed 10,000 rubles. After a week, he gives him 5,000 rubles. Right? A week later, he comes back. He gives him another 5,000. He says, here's 10,000 rubles. Now you can go back to Volozhin. So he goes back to the Volozhin, and this guy's partner comes in. This frum guy had a partner who's also a frum guy. They're very good friends. They're business partners. And this guy comes to Volozhin with the guy who could give him the 10,000 rubles, and he's got a complaint. He says to Reb Chaim Brisker, I got a complaint. I'm taking my friend. I want a din Torah against my partner. He says, what's the problem? He says, Volozhin Yeshiva needed 10,000 rubles. We've been partners in every business venture. This guy gave you all the money out of his own pocket. He didn't take me in as a partner in this venture. It's a nice type of din Torah to have, right? That's a nice din Torah. So Reb Chaim Brisker turns to the first guy and says, what's like, the money came from you? He says, yeah. He says, all the money was from you? He says, yeah. He says, so why did you make me wait in your house? First you gave me 5,000, then you made me wait again. He says, Rabbi, I want to tell you something. Do you know how hard it is for me to part with 5,000 rubles? It took me a week to convince myself to give you the first 5,000 rubles. I says, okay, so why didn't you give me all of it? He says, Rabbi, it took me another week to convince myself to give you another 5,000 rubles. Wasn't that easy? It takes work, because now you're parting with a lot of money over here. To give money is difficult. Torah says give it with enthusiasm. And we had mentioned last week that, remember we said, tzedakah tatzil mimavis. Tzedakah saves from death. Take a look at the word machatzitz, gentlemen. Fourth line from the top. You have to see it inside. You see the word machatzitz half-shekel? Take a look at the middle letter. What's the middle letter? Tzadik, which obviously stands for tzedakah. Look at the two letters on either side of it. Ches on one side and a yud on the other side. What does that stand for? Chai. Look at the two outside letters. Mem and Tuf is what? Mace. Tzedakah brings life closer and pushes death farther away. That's the machatzis shekel. That's what the Vilna Gaon says. Right? Tzedakah pushes death farther away, and it brings life closer. That's pretty crazy, right? That's machatzis shekel. You want to see something even crazier? You want to see something crazier? Turn to Parshas Pinchas. Keep the finger on the place and turn to Parshas Pinchas. 876. 876. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Lemor. See that, Rachamim? Yeah. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. This is after Pinchas killed Zimri and Cosby and put an end to the plague in the Jewish people. He killed them, put an end to the plague. Hey, Shiv es chamasi. He turned back my wrath. He turned back my wrath. Look at the word chamasi. Look at the two middle letters. Mace. Look at the two outside letters. Chai. There was a plague. Death was happening. Life was further away. He turned back my wrath. He turned it inside out. He turned chamasi inside out. So what do you get? You get chai instead of mace. You separate the mace from each other. Hey, Shiv es chamasi. He turned back my wrath. He turned back my wrath. That's what the Vilna Gaon says. So the idea here is that giving the tzedakah is never going to cost you. Tzedakah is never going to hurt you. The tzedakah can only help you. Okay, that's crazy. That's why. Well, yeah, that's crazy. That's why he's called the Vilna Gaon, by the way. Yeah, lots. The amount of tzedakah you're supposed to give is 10%. You're supposed to give 10. Not sorry. You should give look. Tzedakah is it's a vast subject. The idea is somebody who asks you for money, you should give them at a minimum a pruta. Nowadays, you can't give people a pruta; they'll throw it back at you. But if somebody asks, you should give it. But always better to be. Rav Schiller told us once. Rav Schiller, the Rosh Yeshiva, he told us once that some Jewish frum guys, there were guys from a certain yeshiva in America, and they're on their way to the yeshiva, and some of the local toughs started up with them, some of the anti-Semites, and they got into what we used to call back in the day a shagets fight, right? And the fists were flying and the kicks were flying, and one of the guys in the middle of this fight, one of the guys yells, "Hey, Yus! We're supposed to be able to learn from everything in life. What are we supposed to learn from this?" and he punches the guy right in the jaw. He says, the lesson is it's better to give than receive, right? So the attitude with tzedakah is however much you give, whatever you give. All right, better to be on the giving end than on the receiving end. Somebody had a question in the back over there. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Is kofar related to kofar, like when someone's being a kofar?
Is somebody related?
Same spelling, no?
It's is it the same as spelling? Yes. I think Rav Hirsch says it's related to the word kofar, which is the coating on the ark. And a kfir is a young lion. It's the leader of the pack. It's the protector.
So why do we call someone who's a kofar? Why do we give them such a?
What the kofar is a denier. I don't know what the connection to a kofar, that type of kofar is. I don't know, but it's related to the word kofar. Is related to pitch, which was on the outside of the ark, and a young lion is called a kfir. That means it's somebody who's protector. He's the leader of this. So the same way that the money is a protector, it becomes a kapara for a person. That's what Rav Hirsch says. What the idea of a kofar is, that I don't know.
Maybe you could say just like a lion and like a railroad is like on the outside and kind of is going against whatever is coming.
Could be.
up.
It could be. Yeah. Go ahead.
So about what Rabbi said about the Torah tells us to give tzedakah with enthusiasm. The question is, if you're somebody who has that like natural tendency to be generous and you appreciate tzedakah and you give it with joy and whatever, in a way.
What's the question?
In a way, is it less of a?
Anything. That's a good question. It's an important question. Anything that we do, to the degree that you're challenged is the degree you get schar. Lefum tzara agra. That means somebody who finds it more difficult to sit down and concentrate on learning. He's not naturally a book person, not naturally an academic. He gets more schar than somebody who just loves studying and thinking. Somebody who has trouble helping other people, and he overcomes his nature and he helps other people. Because he overcomes it, he gets more schar than somebody who's naturally generous. I do want to tell you something. I heard a story now. I just saw a story. Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz, unbelievable. This one really knocked my socks off. Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz was the mashgiach of the Mir Yeshiva in Europe, and he once got on a train, and he was wearing gloves. It was a very cold day. He was wearing gloves, and as he got on the train, the doors of the train closed, and kind of pinched his glove off. His glove fell outside the train, and the train started moving, so he couldn't get his glove. Think to yourself, what would your reaction be at that moment? Don't say it, because it's probably not something that we're allowed to say out loud. What would your reaction? Remember, it's a bit nippy in Mir, right? We're talking about Northern Europe in the winter, right? In your hands, right? Now, what would your reaction be? Think about your reaction. What was his reaction? Baruch Hashem is good. That means he's very frum and possibly a Baal Tshuva. But what was his reaction? His reaction was that he quickly took off the other glove and threw it out the window, because he figured, listen, one glove isn't going to do me any good. At least whoever finds it should find both. You didn't think of that, did you? All right, you didn't think of that. You see, understand? You could become conditioned. A person can become conditioned in halacha. You become conditioned in the same way by a sensitivity to people. His first reaction is about the other guy, not thinking about himself. So you're right. You're 100% right. The guy who just loves giving away his money, so it's a great thing, but he doesn't get the same kind of reward as somebody who's really born with a more of a self-focused nature and has to work on it. It's like anything in Avodah Hashem. No two people have the same natures. There's some people who like nothing more than going out and looking for a lulav and esrog before Sukkot. I've seen guys like this. I saw a guy once sitting on a bus. He had bought his hadassim, the 3 hadassim on the bus. I saw him on the bus looking at these hadassim. I'm telling you, it reminded of me the way I used to look at my baseball cards, right? He was looking at these hadassim. He was in love with his hadassim. I do it. I got my hadassim. It takes me about 7 minutes to go in and choose some hadassim. This guy, and he was. So some people have it now. A person who forces himself to go get hadassim and start looking and checking to see the 3 in every, say he's going to get more reward. A guy who just loves that sort of thing. He loves that sort of thing. So it's like anything. No two people have the same nature. The Gemara says just like people's faces are different, their temperaments are different. Everybody's got a different temperament. Everybody's got different inclinations. Hold all the questions, gentlemen, because we really have to cover some ground. I want to go on. We'll take the questions later. We'll leave time at the end. Okay? Otherwise, we'll never get going. Now, if you take a look. I want to go on. Take a look at Perek Lamed Aleph Pasuk Yud Ches. Mayor, what were you going to ask, Mayor?
I was going to ask that, there's a lot of procedures that we are instructed how they're supposed to be done, and then we are given how is the procedure of the census meant to be done. And then we see the census right in Pinchas. The census that we find after the instructions is all the way to Pinchas.
Yeah. It's over here is right. The Torah skips around. You have to remember also that the entire Torah we're going to go from the first 2 years of the desert, and then the Torah goes to the 40th year.
Yeah.
And the Torah switches in Parshas, I think right before Baal Losra, if I'm not mistaken, or somewhere in Baal Losra. Later on in the Torah, in Parshas Bamidbar, we finish the second year, and the next thing we know, we're in the 40th year. And the whole 38 years, there's no what do you call it? There's no report of what happened in those 38 years, which means the Jewish people were good. There were no complaining. Nobody got swallowed up by the earth. Nobody. There were no spies. Everybody was just good. Everybody was just doing what they had to do for 38 years, right? I told you, any shul rabbi would love that. You have a congregation. You've been a rabbi for 40 years and you only had 10 complaints. That's pretty good. Most shul rabbis got 10 complaints a day, right? And that's only because that's with 9 congregants. Right? Imagine if they had more congregants. So take a look at Perek, what is it? Lamed Aleph, Lamed Beis, Lamed Aleph Yud Ches, page 492. Vayihi vayiten el Moshe kechaloso ledaber ito. When Hashem finished speaking to Moshe Behar Sinai, Shnei luchos ha'edus, the 2 testimonies, the two tablets, luchos, they translate as tablets. Luchos even ksuvim be'etzba Elokim, tablets of stone that were carved, that were written with God's fingers. Now the first thing that you see over here is these 2 tablets are very significant. It was the only physical item given to man by God in the history of the world. The only physical item that was given. There's a world that's created. Rain comes down. There's all the natural running of the world. Here, Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, go up on the mountain. There are 2 stones waiting for you there. Moshe goes up. People saw that Moshe had never been on the mountain before. And Moshe goes up for 40 days and 40 days. He's got no provisions. It's not like there was a 7-Eleven up there. And Moshe goes up there, and he comes down for 40, and he comes down with two stone tablets. Where'd they come from? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it says openly, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Moshe 2 tablets of stone, which he carved with it. So man has a physical reminder of the revelation of God at Sinai. It's not enough that the people heard the prophecy and prophetically experienced it en masse as a people, which never happened in the history of the world before. That's one of the proofs, what they call proofs of of the truth of Torah. That the Torah itself says, did any other nation ever make a claim that en masse they experienced the revelation of God? No other nation, no other religion. One religion was a guy who was an ice skater, and the other religion was a guy who was who was a madman who came riding out of the desert and threatened, and he convinced, Muhammad had a very convincing way about him. Right, it's a very sharp 2-edged sword, very convincing. And this one had a vision, and this one heard something, and here you got an entire nation. And the Torah itself says, has anybody ever made such a claim? And if you stop, that itself is an astonishing statement. That no other religion claims that their entire people en masse experience God. Not one nation ever claimed that. Not the Greeks and not the Afghanis and nobody ever claimed it. Only one nation claimed it. The Torah says that you're the only ones who claimed it. No one else has ever claimed it. That's a remarkable statement. It's a pretty good call. Considering, even according to Bible critics, this was written an awful long time ago. And somebody made that prediction. Do you know that there's a medrash that says, based on a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, that says, the pasuk says, I will always be with you. The medrash, which is written about 1,500 years ago, the medrash says, I will always be with you. This is a reference to the western wall of the temple that will never be destroyed. Hey, that's a pretty good shot, considering why shouldn't the Western Wall have ever been destroyed? I mean, when was the international treaty made that let's leave that one wall up? The Romans were busy destroying things and burning things, and the Babylonians were destroying things. But we'll leave the Western Wall up. It's a great place. It's a great place for people to come and cry. Whoever made that to say, well, that's a pretty good call. I don't need any sort of predictions to convince me of the truth of the Torah, but it's just for anybody who does. I mean, that's pretty impressive. It's a pretty impressive shot. So you're talking about here a physical reminder of the revelation at Sinai, because after revelation, Moshe comes out. He comes out with the 2 tablets of stone. That's a pretty good. That's a pretty impressive. Then it tells you what we lost when he broke them. That's what we lost when he broke them. Remember, anybody who's having any trouble, did it happen or it didn't happen? Well, why don't you take a look over there? There are 2 tablets carved with God's fingers, which he gave Moshe. Oh yeah, well yeah. I somehow forgot. So that's the first thing. Now, the question over here is, and I'll tell you also a remarkable medrash. I just want to point out an interesting Rashi before we do. Rashi says over here, where is the, do you see it's the right column, 4 lines from the bottom. Kichaloso. God gave Moshe when he finished speaking with him. So Rashi says, Kichaloso ksiv. Choser. It doesn't have a vav. It's read as kichaloso, but it could really read kikalaso, like his kala. Shenimsir lo Torah b'matana kikala l'chasan. The Torah was given to Moshe Rabbeinu as a gift, like a kala to a chasan. How do you like that? Guy gets married, he's got a gift. He's given a wife, a gift, a precious gift. The Gemara says, Isha tova matana tova l'bayla. A good wife is a precious gift to her husband. He couldn't learn the entire Torah in such a short time. Moshe Rabbeinu was up there for 40 days. After 40 days, I mean, you guys have learned, that sometimes you learn 40 days, takes you just one Tosfos. One Tosfos for 40 days, and then we forget it. Moshe Rabbeinu up there for 40 days, Hashem has to teach him the entire Torah. Didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't sleep. You're just learning the entire time. And at the end of that time, Hakadosh Baruch Hu then gives him the rest of the Torah as a gift. Puts a microchip in his mind. Entire Torah is there. What's it called? AI? What's that program? The new thing, right? What's it called? AI. Is it called AI? Yeah, Neuralinks, AI, whatever it is. So Moshe Rabbeinu gets a Neurotorah, right? Hakadosh Baruch Hu gives it to him as a gift. He gives it to him as a gift. Why? Because after 40 days of trying, but the lesson is first try. You want the gift of the Torah, first try. That's why I've always said to you guys, sometimes you guys have learned enough Tosos, you learn enough Gemara. Didn't it ever happen to you? You're learning the Gemara, I don't understand. And after you go over it 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times, all of a sudden, boink, right? All of a sudden you understand. What happened? What changed? You read the same words the first 5 times. So why the 6th time did it work? Why did the coin drop the 6th time? You know why? You got it as a gift. It had nothing to do with you. One thing, and we think, yeah, I worked out, finally my brain filled, finally. No. What happened was you tried. Try, and once we try, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives ultimately the wisdom is given as a gift. But you have to try. Moshe Rabbeinu worked for 40 days. He wasn't up there playing around. Moshe Rabbeinu was sitting there studying Torah, memorizing, learning. He couldn't get everything. So at that point, HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts him, doink, he puts the whole thing in. Because it wasn't enough time to learn, in a certain amount of time, it wasn't enough time to learn the entire thing. I have a very practical take on it for you gentlemen. What's the Torah being compared to? Compared to a bride. It says that amount of time, there wasn't enough time to learn the whole thing. Right? That means no matter how well you know her before you get married, that's not enough time, gentlemen. It's not enough. You'll first begin working her out and figuring it out after, it takes time. 30 years, 40 years, right? Then you may have an inkling of who this person is. Right? That means that what you think you know before you're married, that's an important lesson, by the way. And I sound facetious. I'm not being facetious. A couple, you go out, people say, how can you get married to a girl you've only met her a few times? The shidduch, why, you think if you go out 20 times it's going to help you? You think of 20 times, remember, she's always on her best behavior when you first marry, before you're married, she's on her best behavior. Right? After you're married, then don't worry, she doesn't know you either. Don't worry. The only difference is that she's less surprised than you are. She's much less surprised. Why? Because women have a much better inclination. Women knows, well, this guy is theoretically a criminal, but I'll work on him and keep him out of prison. That's what they're. Whereas men, I told you the difference between men and women when you get married. The husband's attitude is, she's wonderful and I hope she'll always be like this, right? That's what you think when you get married. She's wonderful, I hope she'll always be like this. And she's thinking, he's got wonderful potential, right? That's the entire Torah of marriage on one foot, gentlemen. The rest is only commentary, as Hillel said, right? That's what it's all about, right? She looks at a girl is thinking, yeah, there's work to do here. That's what she thinks. Yeah, he's good potential over here, right? Now we're going to take and make a human being out of him, right? That's what she's thinking. So that's the first. Now that's just an interesting lesson, but even more than that. Question number one: why is the Torah? And I tell you, just really an astonishing medrash, really astonishing. Why is the Torah given luchos? Why are the luchos carved? Why does Hashem give two stones that are carved with the aseret? Remember, they're read from all directions. I mean, they're funny stones. Why does he give Moshe Rabbeinu? Why does he give Moshe Rabbeinu the luchos carved with the aseret adibros in it? What's the symbolism? Obviously, what's the symbolism? So, one of the ideas here is that Torah is obviously unchanging. It's carved in stone. Where do you think the expression comes from? Carved in stone. All these expressions, the writing was on the wall. You know where that comes from? Daniel, when Belshazzar sees the writing on the wall. To pull the wool over his eyes. Ever heard that expression? Well, where'd that come from? Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov, putting Yitzchak is the blind. Yitzchak is blind, and Yaakov was wearing the wool. Almost all these expressions. You stop and think about the expression: get water out of a rock. Right? All these expressions come straight out of Torah. So one of the ideas is that it's carved in stone. Torah is permanent and unchanging. Situations change. Do you know that Reb Chaim Ozer Grzinski, who was the Rav of Vilna, electricity was first had made its way to Europe. It was starting to spread, the kind of electricity. Reb Chaim Ozer Grzinski, when he made Havdalah on Motzei Shabbos, he used, instead of using lighting a candle, Reb Chaim Ozer used to hold his hands up to the electric light bulb. Why?
Because he held that electricity was just like fire as far as...
Correct. He wanted people, because people were kind of, well, what's electricity? You can flip light switches on it. He wanted people to know that as the Posei Kador, he holds electricity as fire. And you can't use electricity on Shabbos, and you can't play. And the only way, nowadays we don't do that, by the way. Use a candle. Use a candle, do what everybody else does. If you happen to be in a big group of people and you can't, you're in the yeshiva and they're making one big communal havdalah with one candle and you can barely see it, so you can hold your hands up to the electric light bulb. But we don't do that. We do we do what Jews do, which is to use a flame. He did it to make a point. That means Torah is unchanging. Maybe technology changes. Maybe things around us change. But it's the same exact Torah. The Torah doesn't change. However, there's a medrash that says that these luchos that were made out of stone, they rolled up like a Sefer Torah. Woo, isn't that interesting? Like, you ever see the guy does Hagbah? And surely the Hagbah, the Torah rolls, the Hagbah. By the way, when you do Hagbah, there's a trick. Those of you who are novices have never done Hagbah. Don't pick up a Sefer Torah like this. It's very hard to lift. You pick up the Sefer Torah like this. You push down on the Sefer Torah like that, and it goes right up in the air. Even I can do it. Even I do Hagbah. Right? It's really it's all technique. You just push down, and the thing almost. Once in a while, you get these old ones that were really big and heavy. That's what I didn't. And you don't have to. Sometimes, in youth group in Bnei Akiva, the guys used to do is they would loosen it up, then pick it up and very dramatically go like this, like that, and try to open it. And then there was a contest: how many columns could you see? We're not. It's not a contest in shul. Leave that in the weight room. It's not a contest in shul to see how many columns. You open up 3 columns is sufficient. You open it up, and what do you call it? Here, It says, I remember, and there were some guys who were really good at it. They would do like that. They say like, then you pick it up just like that. And it was really impressive. Not that we should be impressed by such things, but I was.
One that's like 7, 8 columns.
7, 8 columns. I had guys, like this, and they'd cut, and then they'd go, ooh, right, very spiritual minion. So then you go off to Kiddush Club. So here the Medrash says that they could roll the luchos rolled up like a Sefer Torah. What does that mean? Interesting Medrash, isn't it? So I think what the Medrash is telling you is that on the one hand, Torah is permanent and unchanging, but there is a certain flexibility in Torah. A person should be flexible, and halacha could be flexible. For example, let's say some milk falls into a pot of meat. A posek will look at it, and it will depend on, there's built into the halacha is, well, it depends if it's a significant loss or an insignificant loss. And if it's an insignificant loss, he'll say that you can't eat it. And if it's what's called hefsed meruba, it's a significant loss, then the halacha views it differently. That means there's certain times there's flexibility in Torah. There's flexibility for different people. If one person asks if he should be stringent in a certain hechsher, for example, you should be stringent. You're holding at a level where you should be stringent. Somebody else could ask and say, you could eat that food for you. You're not holding by that level. You understand? There's a certain, even within Torah, there's a certain flexibility, number one. Number two, carving into the stones, the idea of stone is that we know that the Torah was written, I'm sure that you've heard, the Torah existed as a white fire on a black fire. Right? A black fire on a white fire. I think the Zohar says that the Torah exists as a black fire on a white fire. The Parsha was white, the letters are black. What that means is that the Torah essentially is fire, right? The Torah is fire, and I've told you, if you look at the word Bereshis, just look at the word, turn back for a second, anywhere in the book of Bereshis on the top, right? Anywhere in the top of, in the book of Bereshis where it says the word Bereshis, just look at that word for a second.
Even the way it's written on the Torah?
Just look at the word Bereshis, and if you'll notice that the two inside letters spells what? Eish, which is a fire. And look at the two outside letters on either side. You get Beis Reish Yud Taf spells bris, covenant. That means that the Torah itself is a covenant of fire. So the Torah is a fire. So if the Torah is a fire, the fire of Torah, what we'll call the neshama of Torah, is now carved into the luchos. What's the idea? The idea is that man also has a fire inside, which is called the evil inclination, otherwise known as the Yetzer Hara. And the only way here's another expression for you, to fight fire with fire. The only way to fight the fire of the evil inclination is with the fire of Torah. The more Torah you study, the more you'll be equipped to fight the evil inclination. Nothing else will help you. There's no cure for the disease called Yetzer Hara other than studying Torah. Nothing will help you. You could daven, you got to daven for divine assistance, but then you got to take the right steps, which is to study Torah. And the more Torah you study, the more you're inclined, the more we can fight, the more we're equipped to battle the Yetzer Hara. That fire, that neshama, what the commentaries call, the neshama of the Torah is embedded in those stones. Symbolically, that the Torah is what's going to help us to fight the Yetzer Hara, who himself is called an Even. The Yetzer Hara is referred to as a stone. He's hard like a stone. But if you take the Torah, you use the Torah itself, so the Torah helps you to overcome. What else? Okay, now let's go on to the golden calf. Page 492 at the bottom. So Moshe Rabbeinu leaves the people. Now put yourself in the place of the people, the Jewish people. You just came out of a desert. You have a leader. Get you 1 second, Barry. You came out. Yeah, go ahead.
So from what moment the Jewish people was at the
I didn't hear you. Say again.
From what moment the Jewish people was at the state of like Adam Arishon?
What moment it says that in Parshas Yisro it says that they arrived. I don't remember the pasuk. Well, when they arrived at Har Sinai, they're already in that state.
Like in Gan Eden.
I don't know that they're in the desert. Remember, they're living a miraculous existence. They're surrounded by the clouds. They have man coming out there, all that. But they're already at the point where all the sick people are cured. The sick people are cured. There's no more. What's that? From the snake thing, right? From the snake thing, yeah. Anybody who had any illness was cured. The snake thing has gone away. There are no death in the world. There are no death in the world. There are no White Sox fans, right? The world has achieved perfection, right? The world has achieved its ultimate state. What did you say an Argonaut is, by the way?
So it's a sailor of the Argos.
The sailor of the Argos, I see. Somebody asked me what an Argonaut is. I said, I don't know. There's a Toronto football team called an Argonaut. I know what an Argonaut is. Like I know what. So he says a sailor of the Argos. So I know the Argos. Oh, there you go. The good old Argos. Yeah, I've always wondered about that. So what is an Argos?
It's a Greek sea.
Oh, a Greek sea. I see. Oh, yeah. Remind me when I have some free time not to go there. The Argos. Yeah, how can you? I got to put that on my bucket list. So what do you call it? So they come out of Egypt. They're in a desert, and I just giving you the backdrop. We're not going to get to this yet today, but I just give you the background here. You come out. You're out of you got a leader. You've got very few little provisions. You're in a desert. This man has, number one, you've got miraculous food falling from heaven. He's been leading you out there. There's no clear destination here. You're in a desert, and the man who tells you everything has been like clockwork. It's going to rain. Tomorrow at a certain time, the firstborn are going to die at a specific time. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. Everything that he says happens right when he says. He goes like this, doink, and the sea splits. Everything happens exactly when he says it's going to happen. And he says, okay, I'm coming up. I'm going up. I'm coming down in 40 days. And then the Torah says, Vayaram ki boshesh Moshe l'reda. Moshe was late coming down. He's late? He's late or he's the late? Right? Hey, what? Moshe all of a sudden didn't know the time? They made a miscalculation. But according to their calculation, he was late. Moshe was late. Well, can you imagine? You got women, children, you got a wife, a family. You're panicky. You can't blame. Put yourself in their perspective. We're alone in the desert now. What are we going to do now? Wait one more day, just like that. You're probably more panicky just when the bus doesn't come in 15 minutes. You got to wait 15 minutes at a bus stop, we get panicky. All of a sudden, you go to the airport and the plane is delayed by 10 minutes. And they put a half hour like, and then they tell you, well, we're just trying to make sure that one of the wings doesn't fall off at 35,000 feet. All right, but get it fixed fast. That's how. So here they're all alone. So you can understand. By the way, they say that's why Jewish Standard Time. Anytime you go to a Jewish simcha, whatever time it's called for, it starts a couple hours later, right? You always wait at Jewish Standard Time. They say, you know why? Because the one time in history that they expected to start on time, they ended up worshiping a golden calf. So from now on, we don't do that. We'll cut ourselves a little slack. Let it wait a while so we don't end up worshiping God. I'll see you tomorrow, guys.